You know what it is. Book review today, The Social Contract. Pete the Drip. You know what I'm saying? We rocking some Nike windbreaker. Had the G Star the shirt. And for the shorts, we went with some kind of Nike shorts I got. They came with a little fanny pack too. I just ain't got it on right now. They got little pockets right here on the front. You know what I'm saying? We gotta match the drip ski. I mean, match the drip with the book, whatever. Hey, but yeah, man, we got a book review today. The Social Contract by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. You know what I'm saying? This book it's short. I only finished like the first book. This book is divided up into books. I think there's five books. Let me see. Yeah, no, there's 4 books, and it's a short read, but it's a slow read. But just because of like the language he uses in the book, and like how he just like the language was different and like how he wrote it. So it take a little minute to like just understand what he's saying, like to break it down or whatever. But yeah, so today we're gonna do part 1, which is book 1. And book 1 is it doesn't have a title. But and then each book is divided up into like little sections or whatever. So I got my notes. Y'all know how I do. So let's get into it. So the first book is about, he's basically setting the groundwork for how to interpret the rest of the book and like everything else he talks about. So from the first book I wrote, and before I get into it, so the Social Contract, if you don't know who Jean-Jacques Rousseau is, he was I want to say a French philosopher. Let me look that up for y'all. I don't want to give y'all the wrong information. Genevan. I don't know what Genevan means. He was a European philosopher. But he influenced the French Revolution. That's what it was. He influenced the French Revolution. But he was a European philosopher. And he wrote The Social Contract, right? And The Social Contract is... The social contract and the political order it creates are simply the means towards an end, the benefit of individuals involved, and only whatever. So let's get into it. So in book 1, the first thing I wrote that he says, and I wish I wrote the page number down on this, but I didn't. But he says he feels that he is best suited to speak on politics because of the fact that he is not a prince or a legislator. So basically he's saying like because he's a normal person, that makes him best suited to speak on the political stance or like the political policies that are in play or like political structures in general, because he isn't biased either way by like power or anything. And I feel like that was a good point to make. Like, who better to judge than a third party or somebody who's actually inside of the system? You know what I'm saying? Next, I wrote, he says, if you have rights by force, then it is ultimately self-defeating once someone has the power to overthrow you. And that's real, because basically he's saying just because you're stronger than somebody doesn't necessarily give you the right to do something to someone or like enslave somebody or like do something to somebody. Because if that is like that's the sole reason why, then whenever somebody else comes along that's stronger than you, or if somebody that you are ruling over somehow sees an opportunity to overthrow you by that same force which you rule by, then you never had the right to rule in the first place if it's so easily, overtaken. Like it's self-defeating. Like ruling by force is self-defeating by nature. Because, if somebody else is strong, like I just said, if somebody else is stronger than you, then they have that same right to overthrow. And I will say, this is a interesting read. Like this is the first time I'm reading like a philosophy book, a book on philosophy, but I'm really enjoying it. It's a really interesting read. One of my friends, Blake, he sent me a list of some other like philosophical reads, and I'll be ordering those books soon. But yeah, that was on page 12 if you wanted to see that. So then in part 4, I started writing down the parts. I didn't write down the parts at first because I didn't know the book was like, you know. But in part 4, which is called Slavery, he says a king can't provide sustenance a king can't provide sustenance, but instead gets it from his people. So sustenance is basically giving somebody what they need to live, right? But if you really think about it, and I'm getting hot, so I'm gonna just go ahead and take this off. But if you think about it, a king, like of his own like resources, of his like by one man, he can't really support hundreds of thousands of like however many people he leads. But what really happens is those people that he leads actually provide him sustenance by giving things that they have to the king and giving things that they have to the society. That's what makes the king rich. So really, instead of a king, you know what I'm saying, providing support for the people really support the king. If you think about it, because in and of itself, a king can't, like one person can't really provide for like that many people. You know what I'm saying? Another thing I wrote is do people gain tranquility from a king, right? So it says like people believe that if you are under a king, like the king, what people see the king as providing to his people is like tranquility, like the peace of nothing going wrong. But Jean-Jacques Rousseau says that, and this is a good point, he says, tranquility can also be found in a dungeon. Like if you was locked up in jail somewhere, like that's a peaceful place to be. Like listen, Randy, you by yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you locked up in it. Like that's a tranquil place to be because you're alone and whatever. But that doesn't necessarily make it a place that you want to be. Bars. You feel me? That don't necessarily make it a place you want to be. And I feel like, bro, he was spitting in this book. You feel me? Like, he was getting to it in this book. This is a good read. Like, granted, I only finished the first book, or the first section, but this might be in my top 10 books already so far. Maybe top 7 so far, based off what I read so far. Next, he says, also in this section about slavery, he says, the right of conquest has no right other than that, say, of the strongest. Therefore, no slavery. So basically, what he's saying there is, if you conquer somebody, you only have the right in that regard to say that you're stronger than them. You don't have the right to put them in slavery because of what was previously stated, that just being stronger than somebody doesn't give you the right to rule over somebody, because in the event that somebody else strong comes along, or one of those people that you are ruling over becomes stronger than you, then that right is diminished. Like they have the right to overtake by that same law. So just because you overtake somebody, that doesn't necessarily give you the right to enslave them, because it's not a real right. It's not a real right. You know what I'm saying? So next is part 6, and I wrote down 2 things from part 6. This is titled "The Social Compact," right? And he says, I'm just checking the time. Okay. He says, you give up yourself, but receive the whole. And basically, like, when you're in society, you give, like I say, literally what it says, you give up self, but in giving up yourself to the community, you receive the community back in return. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't protect myself, but I'm protected by community. Or I'm giving up some of my goods and things or services that I have to the community, but in return, I get, oh, like the term is like, it's the sovereignty. But in return, I get the goods and services of the sovereignty back as a whole. So it's like, that's what you benefit from it. Like that's the social, that is the social compact of I give up myself to thee, like the community as a whole singular thing, but I receive it back as a resource. And then this was something that I just thought it was interesting. He said a town is only equal to like houses. So houses make up a town, but in order to make it a city, it actually needs people. I forgot what he was talking about in that part, but I just thought it was an interesting distinction to make. Okay, so part 7 is the sovereign. So it says, by definition, this is what I wrote. By definition, the sovereign can't do harm to itself, and therefore can't punish one person because one man gives himself to the whole and becomes the whole, so he himself must be set free. And that one was kind of weird to me at first, but when you think about it, it makes sense. Like I said, by definition, a sovereignty can't harm itself. Like a whole thing, like it can't do anything wrong towards itself. It can't hurt itself. So by that definition, you can't really punish individual people because the individual people make up the whole. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. I don't have a whole lot to say about what he's saying, but I just find these concepts really interesting. I find the concepts very interesting. So that's weird. So now like that made me think, well, how do you keep order in said sovereignty if you can't punish any singular person for whatever action? Because if you punish one, you technically punish the whole thing because of a lot of ones make up a whole. So that was just interesting to me. Next is part 8. Is called the civil state, and it says a man gains more from the civil state than the state of nature. And I actually want to go back and look at that and see what the passage state civil state. Okay, so boom. So basically in the civil state, the state of nature, you're acting out of instinct and just doing things. But when you progress into the civil state, which is like having basically structure and law and order and things like that, you take on the voice of duty instead of like the voice of duty takes on your physical instincts, so like what you just naturally inclined to do, and you gain more from that than just doing whatever. So basically saying you gain more from the civil state because you gain, as of what I said before, you gain the resources from the whole. And you have the ability to get more done and accomplish more things than you would on your own, acting on your own, like primal instincts or whatever, or your own like primal inclinations. When you come into the civil state, you gain the resources as a whole. You can get a lot more done. I know it's not like I'm repeating myself, but I don't. Like, these are really interesting concepts, but they're also really simple concepts. So the most I can really do is like state them. I can't really dig into them because in my mind, that's as simple as it gets. Next, and also in that same section 8, civil state, He says, impulses of appetite is slavery, while obedience to law prescribed on oneself is liberty. So basically, what he's saying is, if you're a slave to your own, if you can't control yourself, you're a slave to yourself. Like you're a slave to your impulses because you can't control yourself. That you're doing whatever your natural instincts tell you to do. So you're living in slavery. But he says obedience to a law prescribes on oneself basically means I'm choosing to follow this law. I'm choosing to be a part of this community. I'm choosing to follow these guidelines. That's real liberty. Because even though there are rules in place that you need to follow, you're following those rules because you want to. Anything you're doing because you really want to do them is the purest form of liberty. You know? Which, again, I say these are just interesting concepts to me. And a lot of these I actually agree with. I agree with a lot of what he's saying. I will say that. So next, part 9, and this is the last part before it gets into book 2. And I started book 2 already, but I think I'm going to just drop this series in, you know what I'm saying, the 4 different parts, like the different books, instead of like overlapping them in videos. So 9 is about real property. And I only wrote down one thing from part 9. And it says, the sovereign keeps anyone from over-asserting by way of laws. But in today's time, laws benefit the rich who have forcefully taken and keep the poor poor. So, and that what he's saying is, naturally, the way the sovereignty is supposed to work, each man or group of people is only supposed to get as much as he or she needs or they need. But the way the world is today, the laws created by people up top have made it in a way that they have made laws in a way that they unfairly favor those who are in power or those who have. And they keep, actually, like I said, keep poor people poor. And that was interesting to me because I don't know, when was this written? This was written in 1762. And that's literally how it is today. That's exactly how it is today. So, yeah, man, that was quick. So yeah, that's book 1 of The Social Contract by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Check out my other book reviews. I got a whole playlist on them. Check out some of my stock breakdowns. You can also check out it's kind of like a podcast / brain dump where I just talk about things that come to my mind through the week. Called Access Granted. I want y'all to check those out. There's literally just a lot of different random topics. But yeah, I will be dropping book 2 next Monday. So yeah, y'all tune in, man. Peace.